Well, good morning. And here we are again back for another faculty spotlight. How fitting it is today as we near the end of Black History Month to have our next faculty spotlight on someone that I just came to really know, even though we know she's been here for 27 years at the university. And I knew the name. I knew some things about her, but I had an opportunity this morning in the green room to get a little more conversation about our next faculty spotlight person. Good morning and happy Friday. I am Linda Jackson, and I'm the Director of Sponsored Research and Programs here at Virginia Union University. And so welcome all of you on campus and all of those viewers who have joined us today. If you've been a part of this in the past weeks, you know this is the quickest 30 minutes you're going to experience. And it goes by quickly, but it is packed with wonderful information about different various persons on our campus who are faculty. So today we have the privilege and the honor to learn a little bit about another faculty person, and that is Reverend Dr. Patricia A. Gould-Champ. She has been a part of the university, as I said, the Samuel DeWitt Proctor School of Theology for 27 years. She serves as a tenure associate professor in the area of practical theology. She serves on the University Faculty Senate and is the secretary of the Faculty Advancement and Tenure Committee. Dr. Gould-Champ is also the founding visionary of the Faith Community Baptist Church, where she serves as senior pastor for the past 25 years. She has 3 books. Where do you find the time? Pamela Goes to Church, The Gospel According to Cancer, Reflections for Women with Cancer, and Pamela Gould Gets Baptized. She serves as president of Community Inc. Development. It is a 501c3 nonprofit community development corporation and is located in the East End, in the heart of the city of Richmond. And she's also a member of Equitable Food Oriented Development Stakeholder Work Group and the Virginia Food and Vegetable Prescription Program Stakeholder Group. How impressive. Future proposed community development projects. She has a few and some we talked about. I'm very impressed with them. I want to hear more. But they include partnership with the Virginia Supportive Housing to build 86 one-bedroom transitional apartments for who? The homeless. And a 3-story care center dormitory for youth aging out of foster care. We started some good conversation about that, and I want to hear more. But since this goes by so quickly, let's get started. We have a lot to unpack, and we want to hear from our faculty today who's being spotlighted. So without any further ado, let's get started. Good morning, Reverend Dr. Patricia A. Gould-Champ. We want to know about you. Tell us all about you. Tell us about yourself, your academic training, and the field of expertise, your specificity. Give us a glimpse as to who you are.
Well, good morning. Good morning. It's interesting. I graduated for the first time from Virginia Union in 1969, and I graduated with a BA in sociology. And so I am a soc major, which was awesome, awesome foundation for me. I realized when I completed school that for whatever reason, my sociology intersected with my love for teaching. And so I got a master's in elementary education and began a teaching career. And so I'm an educator. And so I taught in elementary school and was an elementary school principal, and then went on to get a doctorate in educational administration and went on to work for a considerable time at the Virginia State Department of Education. So my expertise was in administering educational programs. I was responsible for the millions of dollars that came into the state at the time with regard to what was known as Title I money. And of course, we know that that is funds that is to increase the educational academic success of low-income children in particular, but children who are struggling in certain areas. And so I did research in education, also was advising different educational systems and how to improve the education of those students. And of course, it was at that time, just having finished a doctorate, that God called me into ministry. In fact, I was called to come to seminary at Virginia Union right as I was thinking I was doing something by finishing my doctoral work early so that I wouldn't, be waiting until the last minute. But in the middle of that, in January, I'm in seminary, and I had to even take off from class to go back to pick up the degree in that May. But all of it kind of flows together. And so it was also right after the call that I began, this career in ministry as well. And in fact, I have served past tense as the senior pastor of Faith Community for the past 25 years. We are in a model right now that I believe in succession. And so I have been succeeded as senior pastor by two wonderful women who are now co-senior pastors. I am still there as founding visionary and a part of the leadership team, but I am not in the role of senior pastor, which is a wonderful model that we are trying to share with other churches. And so it is in line with what I do at the seminary, because my expertise is in the area of practical theology. And of course, all theology is practical, because if it does not serve us in a practical way, and it is not useful for the day-to-day living of people, then it certainly is not God talk. It is not about the things of God, because God would have us to live out our faith and live out our beliefs and our experience with God. So I'll kind of stop there.
Well, that was just a powerful statement. Of course, based on our conversation before we started, that really resonates with me. And I said, God is trying to tell me something. And I appreciate what you just shared with us. But look at God in your life. Wow. I didn't know about the education part of it and about being a principal and starting there. But what a wonderful journey you have had. Tell us a little bit about your experience with being a reverend and and as part of the theology faculty. Tell us about that?
Well, as a minister, I had very few female models at the time, but there were certainly some trailblazers like Dr. Nan Brown, like Dr. Yvonne Bibbs, that were trailblazers for me, like Dr. Clara Borden. But I was also blessed to be in churches where the pastors were advocates for female ministers. And so I was blessed to have some wonderful pastors who nurtured me and who I was able to kind of watch. I always say more is caught than is taught. And so as I watched them, I learned a lot about my own ministry. When I came to seminary in the area of practical theology, it was really at first just to teach a course. And that course was Introduction to the Church and its Ministry. And also, eventually, they asked me to do field education. And at that time, field education was designed to give students at the seminary practical experience in churches. And so that was, awesome. Let seminary students come help them to be connected to seasoned pastors at who were seminary trained at various churches, where they could learn what this looks like that you're studying. You know, what does this look like, you know, when you go into a church? What does evangelism look like? What is preaching? You know, what is it all about? What does it mean to pastor? Because to pastor is to be with people, to love people, you know, to serve with people. And so for many years, I taught and did field education. And of course, you know, we are always evolving at the seminary. So we realized that both of those things were uh, uh, they were powerful and needed full attention in and of themselves. So we separated the field education from my teaching. And of course, Dr. Bledsoe, is doing an awesome job with field education. But I love practical theology. I love the course introduction because I am teaching first year students when they first come in. And it really gives an overview of, well, its introduction, you know, what the church is all about. You know, what are some things that we still continue to wrestle with concerning the church? What is the church? And during this season, it's awesome because we get to reimagine, rethink, you know, re-envision the church, because so much of our thinking about the church in the past may have been obstructed by our concentration on buildings, you know, and people gathering. But now we see that the church is beyond buildings. It is beyond even people being able to physically be together, that there's a spirit, there is a culture, there is a climate, but most of all, there's a fellowship and there's a bond, a faith bond that keeps us together, whether we are physically together and whether we're ever able to be in a building right now or not. And so it's been awesome and marvelous and helping students to even re-envision and reimagine for their own places, their own churches, you know, those fellowships that they're involved in.
Wow. I had some questions around that, but before I get to those, I'll come back to that. I think we want to know now a little bit about something that was shared in your bio. We know that you're author of 3 books. So you published about pastoral experiences for women. Tell us a bit about your research and your scholarship around that.
Well, the book I think you're referring to, I have not finished. And I guess the reason I haven't finished it is because I'm probably so busy doing that I don't always put it down on paper. But I do want to finish Without a Blueprint, Reflections of a Female Pastor, because I think that, like I said, it's so much that nobody can tell you about being a pastor. It is experiential, it is relational, and the way in which I want to do that is not from what some would consider the scholarship realm of it, because I want to deal with stories. Most people who know me know that I'm a storyteller, because for me, there is so much power in the stories because they help us to see the journey and to connect to the why of something. And so what I will do in Without a Blueprint is talk about stories along the journey. And each vignette at the end, there will be a takeaway. What were my takeaways from that? There are things that male pastors said to me, experiences I had, you know, as being on a staff, that, you know, at the time, I didn't understand what that lesson was. But I realized as I concluded that experience, what was being taught, you know. And so I think that a lot of times for all of us, but for women in particular, there's nobody saying, do this, do that, do the other. this is lesson number one, this is lesson number two.
Mhm.
You know, if you don't understand, if you don't use your gift of discernment, if you're not able to interpret what you see and what you hear, if you're not able to take advantage of the modeling that is going on before you by your pastor or by other ministers that are there with you, then you are sometimes, you know, feeling alone, but the resources are there. And so helping women in particular to understand how you navigate the waters of ministry. You know, when you go into a church, you know, how do you learn the culture, because every church is different. How do you uh how do you deal with the because it's, you know, that's where my background comes in. How do you deal with just, this is how people are, you know, this is how people operate. Fear operates sometimes, it looks like resistance, but it's not resistance against you, it's about fear. And so as a female minister, you know, beginning out, you know, there were a lot of things that looked like resistance, and I guess in a way they were. But I'm the kind of person that, you know, I understand, you know, people don't just act in a certain way because they are, quote, not of God. Generally, there's some fear, there's some hurt, there's some pain that underlies that action. And so as a minister, you know, I learned how to go beneath that and to learn how to meet people, you know, on a heart to heart level, and for them to know that I love them. And most of the time, as my mother always said, and it certainly is true, that love can do a whole lot of stuff that force can't.
Mhm.
So I'll stop there.
So true. So very true. And how fortunate the university is and the students that attend the School of Theology to benefit from your wisdom and your training and your enthusiasm. Tell us, what are you teaching currently at BUU?
Currently, I am teaching Introduction to the Church and its Ministry. And it's been wonderful to see over the 27 years how that course kind of, it really has to meet the times of which we're in. But we really deal with the church, because a lot of times students need to really wrestle with their understanding, even, you know, to even find out what they've been conditioned, how they've been conditioned to understand and approach the church. So we deal with the church, we start there. We deal with ministry, because Virginia, the School of Theology is not just for persons who want to pastor, but it's for persons who want to minister. And so that ministry, when the seminary first started, most persons who came were males, and they were males who were going to be pastors. But we have just an awesome diversity of students, and many of them are not wanting to pastor in the traditional sense, but they have powerful, awesome ministries. And so we deal with what types of the opportunities for ministry. But then the last part, which for me is most critical, is we deal in that course, I deal with the minister as a person, because who you are as a person affects your ministry. And so we deal with the mental well-being of the minister, and we deal with, you know, the financial well-being. We deal with how ministers deal with their own relationships, because if you are prone to be involved in broken relationships, then you're going to bring that prone toward brokenness into your relationship with the persons that you meet in the church, because you don't know how to have a whole relationship with another person. And so that last portion where we deal with the minister as a person, you know, where we talk about, you know, therapy is a part of our mental well-being, just like having a primary doctor is a part of our physical well-being. And so we talk about that. And so I'm teaching intro, and I'm also teaching senior seminar, which is in fact a seminar where we try to bring together, I try to help the students bring together all that they have learned in their journey at STVU. And we, in the last couple of years, the students do a capstone presentation project, so that what are you going to do with this? How is this going to enhance or add value to your church, to your community, to your life? That it, because we are not a degree mill. We are not just here to provide credentials for people. We're here to train ministers who are going to bless and enhance the lives of people and the life of the community. So I'll, stop there. So those are the two. I also do a HIV/AIDS in the African American Church, that course. And on occasions, I have done a course on women in ministry, because I think, it's just, and it's done from the practical theology aspect, where we deal with, God, then we move to scripture, or what, the scriptural, and then the theological, then the scripture, and then we move to the practical. And so those are the courses that I have done an urban ministry course, which is where we talk about what it means to do ministry in the city.
Well, that is, your work is just phenomenal. And we could go on for another 30 minutes, but we're coming close to the end of the first 30 minutes. And what wonderful conversation you've allowed us to engage in to this point. But we have a few more questions for you. And I'm also going to, at this time, let all the viewers know, if you have any questions, this is a great time to put them in the chat so we can do the Q&A if you have any questions at all. But I do have another question, and that is, if you had to give some advice, what advice would you give to those who are considering a major or minor or degree in theology or practical theology or anything in that genre? What advice would you give?
Well, I would certainly encourage those who are have been called, those who have a call in their lives, those who are answering that call to do ministry, that theological education is necessary. And so we want you to come. And we want you to come not with any presupposition. Well, come with presuppositions, but expect those presuppositions to be addressed and to be challenged and to be transformed in some cases. But come with your questions, come with your, your wrestling, because STVU is a wonderful place. We are not trying to rubber stamp a particular thing in your mind, but it's a place for us to wrestle together with the awesomeness of God and how God leads and directs us and how God empowers us to do awesome things and really calls us to do awesome things, and how to envision beyond what we have seen before or what we're even able to see right now. I get excited about that. I'm excited about that, the possibilities of seeing and doing things that have not been done before. And especially when people say, well, it can't be done, you can't expect people to, yeah, you can expect. In fact, faith is a lot of expecting. That is what faith is, that I'm expecting God to show up. I'm expecting God to show up in the classroom, just like I'm expecting God to show up everywhere that God allows me to present myself. And so, I would say, come, be prepared to do some serious work, be prepared to do some serious thinking, and be prepared to allow what you think and what you think to be challenged and not to be thin-skinned about that, but to know that we have to, the conversation among us will sometimes be tense, but it helps all of us to grow.
When you think about good news, the good news is God is here right this moment with us. That's the good news. And such calming peace does that bring, just the thought of it. Thank you for sharing that. We have a couple questions from our viewers. So we have from Dr. Hassan. To what extent mental health training has been incorporated to education in theology schools?
Well, when I introduce it in introduction, because it is the first class, and I introduce the fact of the need that our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And so I do not try to get deep into that, but I introduce the understanding that every person, I believe, should have a therapist. And so, and of course, I'm able to give resources for that for our students. And that's what we do at the seminary. And there are persons who are trained in counseling who are on our faculty. We're blessed with that. But we know that for ministers, that a lot of the things that we are doing, it can drain us, not just physically, but mentally. And so really, in the introduction course, what I'm doing is presenting the fact that it is necessary as a minister, just as we are preparing ourselves, academically, that we also have to make sure that we're practicing good self-care and that we have the qualified person's resources to be with us in making sure that we are mentally well.
So we have two more questions that we're going to try to take. That question was Dr. Z. Thank you so much, Dr. Z, for your question. The next one is from Dr. Shepard. You have been very successful for 27 years. Describe your mentoring methodology.
I guess my mentoring is sort of a walking with type of methodology. And it's because it's the kind of mentoring that I have received that people walked with me and allowed me to walk with them. My mother was a walker, for an example. I use this example all the time. She was an avid walker before she could not walk. And I remember I would go walking with her. And she had this pace, and it was fast. But we would be talking together. And because we were talking together and that conversation was bonding us, either she would slow her pace or I would speed my pace up so that we could walk together. And I think that's what relationship and mentoring is about, that you find yourself walking with, and as you're sharing, as you're bringing people alongside you, either you're going to have times when you're going to slow down and there are going to be times when they're going to speed up, or vice versa. So if that may not be, but it's been walking with has been my methodology for mentoring, sharing the experiences that my stories, like I said, all I have a lot of times are stories.
And so we have one more question for you before we wrap up, and that's from Terrell Glenn. And so the question goes, in this time of reimagining ministry, what are some of the practical ways in which you have been shifting the ministry mindset?
Well, of course, the most prevalent thing in the times in which we live is that relationship is, the not being able to be together. And so how do you connect without being physically in the same space? And so in imagining the church, first of all, to help us understand that church is the foundation of church is a common faith and a common belief. And so you have to intensify that. You have to connect at that level of our faith journey. That is, there are some common threads in all of our faith journeys. Prayer, you know, um, the word of God, but even just the belief in the inherent good of one another. And so you got to reinforce those basic kinds of things, with people as we are reimagined. Because the fact of the matter is that when we go back into church buildings, and I'll say this, there may be up to 50% of persons who are not coming back into those buildings. And so we will have to imagine, what does church look like where you have a building that is used by some, but they are not all of the church. And I think we've got to start preparing for that if we have not already done so. And I hope that we have already been talking about it because, like I say to people, what seems like a year away is tomorrow, as far as I'm concerned. I'm an educator and I'm a planner. And so anything that's a year away, like, people talk about in the fall, well, guess what? You can't wait until July to start waiting, preparing for the fall. That's tomorrow. And so what is our plan? What do we envision? And that's why, God is calling us to use these spaces for other things other than worship, because worship takes place in whatever space we find ourselves in. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but I'll stop there, Dr. McShepard.
So that was Terrell Glenn's
Oh,
question from the mindset. Thank you so much for that. I do see two questions. I'm going to see if I can squeeze them in. We're a little past our time, but because persons were here from the beginning, I do want to get these two in. So there are going to be quick responses to them. The first is, do you think it's important for students to know other religions besides Christianity? And then someone asked if you can share your testimony on how you recovered from your illness.
Of
And
course,
then I do have one comment from one of your students who wrote a comment. I do want to share it.
Okay, of course, we need to know all religions, all ways in which people approach God and how because the religions and denominations are all the ways in which we appropriate our experience with God. And so I think that we need to know that. I've been privileged and blessed to be able to know and to work with in ministry persons from many different religious persuasions. And I have never believed that that should not happen. I think it has made me a richer person, a better person. And so, yes, yes to that question. The other question had to do with my own testimony about cancer. Um, the thing that really blessed me was, and the gospel according to cancer is my testimony. And so if you have not read it, it is a series of things that I wrote in my journal, because journaling is important and valuable to me. It's my way of getting stuff out. And so when I first was diagnosed with cancer, I began a journal that was about that journey, because I didn't know how the journey was going to end. And of course, we never do, because, it always, there's a possibility of reoccurring. But each story is about things that I was wrestling with at the time. And as I talked about it, from the first call from the doctor, when the doctor said, it's cancer. But, I had my journaling, but I had people who were praying, I mean, intentionally praying. There's a story in the book about, one day after church, they told me two women were waiting for me. And it was two sisters, the Jiggett sisters, who were waiting. And they came all the way across town just to lay hands and pray for me. There was my own faith and belief that my work was not finished, but of course, I'm yielding to God's will, but I believed that my work was not finished. And so I didn't stop doing the work. I just continued to do what I believed God was calling me to do, even in the midst of it. I had an awesome, awesome church family that walked with me. And of course, awesome husband and daughter, but it was prayer, it was belief, it was faith, and it was doing what all of us do in hard times. We get up and we move through the day. The last title in the book is I'm going to live until I die. That's the last thing. And I was, what I believe, I'm going to live until I die. And so, until God says this journey is concluded, then I'm going to do the work that has been assigned to me to do, and do it with joy, and do it with excitement. One of the things that I don't do anything that I'm not excited about. In 30 some odd years as a minister, it hasn't always been easy, but I have never been not excited about it. In my preaching, been disappointing for me sometimes in my preaching, or, fearful and all of that, but have never been not excited. Because whatever opportunity God gives us, I get excited about it. So I'll stop there.
So thank you so very much, Reverend
Yes.
Dr. Patricia A. Gould-Champ. I do want to say that Janae Johnson was one of your students, and she made mention in the chat that she had taken several of your courses, and that her ministry is in a great place because of your love, your wisdom, and knowledge. And she wanted to say, God bless you, Professor, because job well done. Apparently, she's here this morning to be a part of the faculty spotlight. And I thank all of you, and especially Reverend Dr. Patricia A. Gould-Champ, for letting us get a glimpse of who you are, and also thank you for 27 years of being at the university. And I thank all of you for joining us today for our faculty spotlight. We look forward to your presence again next month, the month of March. We have some wonderful faculty spotlights in store for you. You just wait and see. Have a wonderful day and a delightful weekend. No snow this weekend. It's going to be sunny and warm. Thank you all. Have a great day. Thank you, Reverend Doctor.
Bless you. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all.